But ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for giving me this real privilege to stand here before you today. It's a real honor. It's just so great when you can be amongst people who really play a significant part in the businesses that they are in the jobs that they are in. But there are people who center everything that they do, not only in their homes, but in their businesses, around the principles of God. Just by way of background, I am a son of a minister, Methodist minister. But even myself, having grown up in the church, I had to find God in a very difficult way. Doesn't matter how many Sunday school classes that you attend, doesn't matter how many services you attend, along the journey, your own journey, you do find God, and it's normally in very difficult circumstances. And so therefore, I'm very honored to be here today amongst yourselves. The topic was about humility. But humility, for me, is something that is premised by something else before that. And because you are all leaders here in one way or the other, I just sort of thought about, how about talking about servant leadership and how you do that with humility. It is a broad topic, the servant leadership. And really, for me, the real foundation of servant leadership can really be premised on one aspect, and that is, what is your purpose in life? And Noel, I'm just so glad, you just touched on the words. I don't know whether you've got spies, because you sort of articulated quite a lot of things that I was going to be talking about. So my talk starts about what is our purpose as human beings, first of all. The answer to that question sets the scene for the second part of my talk, which is focused on the challenges that exist in our country. And therefore, as we sit here as leaders, being confronted by the challenges of our country, then what becomes our purpose as servants to play our part in not sitting on the side and criticizing, or sitting on the side and praying, but also the action that is required with those prayers. And therefore, I will be wanting to challenge each and every one of us to say, in the context of being servant leaders, in the context of having understood what our purpose, we are then called to action. The biologists tell us that our purpose as human beings are to perpetuate the human species. Wow. And that is a genetically coded survival instinct common to all living things. If it was that simple, hey, it would likely be a very happy and fulfilling place. We can just procrastinate, and it's nice, and it's fun, but life is not about that. And yet men's search for a deeper meaning for life over the millennia show that that cannot be the case. That's not our purpose. Humanity has sought and found a purpose in the plans and the words of God, and also wise men who have been there the sages, the prophets. The Bible is full of wisdom about what God intends of us to be. In Judaism, man's purpose is defined in God's instruction to Adam to replenish the earth and conquer it by elevating and refining the whole of nature to the service of humanity illuminated by the divine image. Before a man sets out to conquer the world, however, he must first conquer himself and his ego. God imposed this duty on each person. If a person does not fulfill his task and does not use his God-given powers, it not merely is a failure, but it is something that affects the destiny of the whole world, because you were born with a God-given purpose. And if we don't understand what that is and we realize it, we've actually robbed not only ourselves, but we've robbed God. For Jews, therefore, every human being, regardless of their circumstances, has the fullest capacity and also the duty to attain the highest degree of fulfillment and accomplish the same for creation as a whole. So in addition to the story of creation of man and his purpose to replenish the earth and have dominion over it, our Christian faith and the Bible tells us that God has a purpose and a plan for each of us. God tells Jeremiah, "Before I made you in your mother's womb, I chose you. Before you were born, I set you apart for a special work." And the story of Christ's life serves as a perfect template for servant leadership. And as Mark reminds us, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. The call for action. Paul tells the Ephesians that God has created us for a life of good deeds, which he has already prepared us to do. And then Matthew tells that our purpose is to live our lives according to God's plan, not our plans. It's very interesting how God has a way of cutting short your plans when you don't listen to his plans. And in most instances, he does it in a way that seems rather ruthless, if I may say. But we tend to be stone deaf sometimes. I always say that, I don't think you can find God in a party, because there's too much noise in a party. You're unable to listen to God talking to you. You don't find him in a rugby stadium either. I've not seen many people being converted in a rugby stadium. And so it is during those discerning moments, where things seem to have gone horribly bad, that when you've given yourself and you've surrendered yourself and you've humbled yourself to the situation, that you are able to find God and you hear him speaking to you. So really for me then, this brings me to the second part of what I want to say to you today. We live in a country that personally I think is in trouble. And there's a really loud call for us to really make a difference. We are facing many challenges. Socially, politically, and economically, we see increasing demand for change. There's a growing sense of unfairness, and hardly a day goes by without new, often violent protests flaring up around the country. People's frustrations are really at a boiling point right now. And according to the Center of Social Change at the University of Johannesburg, we have close to 2,000 protests a year in this country. 2,000. Though we at this event may not actively experience inequality the way some of our fellow citizens in our townships and poor areas do, intellectually and emotionally deep down, we all know that the current situation cannot hold. Irrespective of our racial background, the middle classes cannot afford to be tone deaf of the challenges of a slowing economy and the lack of jobs. There's a growing anger around poor service delivery, corruption, state capture, and inadequate education for all. The sense of hopelessness and frustration at broken promises is palpable. The majority of people's lives are not getting better. And it's not just a societal and a governmental problem. Business is not absolved from these challenges. Just consider the inequalities around executive pay. No wonder we see so much cynicism of business. Data from the World Bank confirms that South Africa remains one of the most unequal countries in the world, registering close to 0.7 on the Gini coefficient. Believe it or not, the total net wealth of just 3 billionaires in South Africa is equivalent to that of the bottom 50% of the country's population. That is according to Oxfam's latest inequality report. 3 billionaires. And while affluent classes have grown more racially representative, South Africa's poor remain mostly black. Reports by Stats SA show that youth unemployment is frighteningly at 50%. With half of our youth having no prospects for employment, we are sitting on a ticking time bomb. It should therefore come as no surprise that populist rhetoric of radical economic transformation and white monopoly seems to resonate so well in some quarters. These terms have emotional and political traction in an environment where economic policies have failed to generate the jobs and inclusion as was promised. But we here in this room also know that populist policies, what they will bring. One need only to look at the catastrophic situation of our neighbor in the north, which shall remain nameless, but I think you all know what we're talking about, and countries like Venezuela. A focus that only looks at redistribution than growth will benefit a few at the expenses of the majority, resulting in millions of already poor people suffering most from an ever-shrinking economy. South Africa can and must do better than this. I'm coming to the servant leadership. Okay? I'm setting the context of our reality. When we walk out of this place, that is our reality out there. And therefore, you're going to have to deal with it here if you're going to be deemed to be servant leaders. This crisis has been visible for a while, and it is widely attributed to the lack of leadership. In 2015, ANC stalwart and academic Raymond Statner referred in particular to erosion of integrity insofar as there is conscious evasion of duties to advance the goals and aspirations outlined in the Constitution. It is these words, duties, that I want to pick up on because it speaks to our purpose as human beings. I believe that in his book, Long Walk to Freedom, that Madiba said that after his death, he wanted those who remained behind to say, this man has done his duty. What are we going to be remembered for? I wonder. But unless revealed by God, how will we know what our duty or our purpose is? Greek philosopher Epictetus tells us that our duties naturally emerge from some fundamental relationships as our families, neighbors, workplace, our state, or the nation. He suggests that we make it a regular habit to consider our roles as parents, children, neighbors, citizens, and leaders, and the natural duties that arise from them. Because once we know who you are and to whom you are linked, you will know what to do. This is very important in the sense that we find ourselves in a society where there is so much violence in the home front. There is so much abuse of women and children. And it's all happening around us. It's happening in families. And again, what is our duty then? Especially, what is our duty as leaders? Having said all of what I've said. How do we include those who are currently excluded? How do we create opportunities for those who are being marginalized? And how do we give a voice to the voiceless? I believe we must answer these questions by examining the fundamental role of organizations in society and our role as business leaders. Look at the May-June edition of the Harvard Business Review in an article written by Joseph Bauer and Lynn Payne called "The Error at the Heart of Corporate Leadership." The article summarizes growing calls for rethink of the capitalist model and the purpose of organizations by questioning whether the duty of CEOs and boards is to maximize shareholder value or to meet the needs of society. The King IV Code of Governance also provides some useful guidelines for stakeholder-centric, ethical, and effective leadership. Tom Peters even puts it succinctly: organizations exist to serve. Period. Leaders live to serve. Finish. What's that African word? Klar. Robert Greenfield's servant leadership model offers a way of thinking about how we can achieve that purpose. Servant leadership, ladies and gentlemen, seeks to involve others in decision making. Is strongly based on ethical and caring behavior and enhances the growth of workers while improving the caring and the quality of organizational life. The best test is, do those whom we serve grow as people? You touched upon that. Do they, while being served, become healthier, wiser, freer, more autonomous, more likely themselves to become servants? And what is the effect of the least privileged in society? Will they benefit, or at least not to be further deprived? Further to the point on governance, Greenleaf's view of all institutions was that in which CEOs, staff, trustees all played significant roles in holding their institutions in trust for the greater good of society as stewards, and I believe this is a view that we in South Africa could well do to adopt. And so therefore, ladies and gentlemen, before radical economic transformation is forced on us, it is time that we as business leaders and all leaders start thinking very hard about how we build shared value for every one of our stakeholders inside and outside. Because we are already sitting on a time bomb. The longer we take to answer the questions being asked by society, the worse the devastation will be when that time bomb goes off. And so really, in addressing our country's many challenges, in being of service in this way, we believe we are helping to heal the country, feed and clothe its people, and fulfill our purpose as an organization. All of which ultimately is what God has commissioned us to do. And so really, coming from a mining industry, we are confronted today by a great challenge. On one hand, you've seen in the press about this new mining charter, which seeks to rob. Not only to rob, it actually seeks to steal from our country. We talk about state capture. I can stand here before you. What Flip didn't say when he was introducing me was that in May, I was elected the president of the Chamber of Mines. 3 weeks later, I had to take the minister to court with our team. It comes with great dangers, the game that we are playing. Because the game of state capture is one that is very real. Billions are being stolen. And the question is, if we truly care for this country, if we truly are being called to serve, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to sit on the sidelines? Are we going to say it's not my problem, it's your problem? Or are we going to be called to action? Now, a thing happened to me which I've never thought would ever have to happen in my life, in the course of the challenges that we have to confront and deal with them. Because the truth of the matter, as business, we've actually said war has been declared. And the question is, can we fight a holy war? Putting our trust, putting our faith in God. Because we're in a Jericho moment where the walls are high, where the enemy seems strong, insurmountable. And yet we are called to break those walls and get into the gates and deal with this thing. Because if we don't deal with it head on, it's going to consume us, and there will be nothing left for our children and our grandchildren. And the question will be, where were we at this time in history, when history judges us? Where were we? And so for me, I was asked, who are these gentlemen that are here with you? Who are they? They are sitting right here. Never in my life did I think that I would have to have bodyguards to protect me 24/7 because of the fight that we are fighting today. People ask, why do it? And I say, well, if I don't do it or play my part in doing it, whom do I expect to do it? Because as I look forward, I'm saying this is not about myself. It's about what we can do for our children and the generations to come. And unfortunately, it comes with sacrifices, personal sacrifices in some instances. You will all know of Makosa Zanakoza, that lady, that fierce lady who dared to defy the ANC, to call for Zuma's downfall, who is being threatened every day for her life and her family. I'm talking people about service. You know, the cross, I don't think was a nice place, but Jesus was prepared to go there for us. Servant leadership. He humbled himself. He was prepared not to have his feet washed, but to wash those of the others. We're talking about humility here. Please, this is not a funeral, so you don't have to be so somber. You don't have to be so somber. But it is very easy to come to gatherings. We get together, we talk, we criticize, we are angry. But at the same time, we say, well, that was great. See you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to create the next week for ourselves. We have to create the future. But we can't do it on our own. I earlier said that, you know, I found God in a very tough time. But when I look back in the journey of my life, there are times when I say, I don't know how I went through that. And each time I'm confronted by something new, somehow it comes right. And I want to say somehow, and I'm going to qualify this somehow. And then I suddenly realized that, you know what? This somehow is not somehow. It's God always there at the time. So if I can just have the faith in Him, that even in this time, even in this journey, to have the faith and the conviction that He is going to be with us. God loved this country so much that He has sent people before us, good leaders. There will be those who will rise beyond what we see today. Let's not be fooled that God is not here, He's not present just because of what we see. He is very much. Sometimes I even ask myself, is He actually orchestrating this for a particular purpose? Because the question I always ask is, how did it get to be so bad and we were here watching it? Why are we being called to action today and march when all along we should have been saying this cannot happen during our lifetime? How did we get here? So in much as we point fingers that side, we should point the fingers at ourselves because we became complacent. It was easy. We wanted to take the safe way. No, we cannot ruffle the feathers of the establishment. That's very cowardly. That's very, very cowardly. Because the wise of the prophets who were sent by God, they never had a nice life, those guys. In actual fact, they had a tough life, most of the prophets. But they knew what the call was about. And so I'm asking you, I'm challenging you sitting here. The 8th of August. Have you heard what's happening on the 8th? There's a call on us. On a very critical day when that secret vote is going to be made. And the action is not about whether the vote is going to be secret or not secret. It's about demonstrating the repugnance we have for what we see happening. It's about us being called to action. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we are called to be of service. But we have to do it with humility. We've got to be able to say we can wash other people's feet. We can actually play a role in closing this gap of inequality. It is our challenge. Organizations are being challenged. I always say to my company, you know what? We've had issues of food security in this country. We've actually had issues of water security, energy security. We sit with vast land. Some of them times we pump water out, but yet people go hungry. Communities that once depended on us for their survival while we're still mining, when we close those mines, life ceases to exist for them. Yet we're sitting on land. People are hungry. Why are we not feeding the people? Okay, I'm not a farmer, but the land is there. Why are we not make this land available? And so, in closing, humility. We've got to be humble enough to realize that we are not here to serve ourselves. We must be humble enough to realize that we have been called by God Himself to be of service to His people. When we pray and ask for God to assist, He doesn't send chariots, down, with angels and say, okay, the Calvary is coming. He says, I'll send you and you and you to go and answer that prayer. You're going to be my servant. So let us take the time to hear and to listen, to humble ourselves. You can't hear God when you're arrogant, you know that? Because you're so full of yourself. Your ego just overtakes you that you don't take the time to just be still and listen. And so with that, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you very much for the few moments that you've given me here. And it is good to be among leaders, people who really are centered, who center themselves in the purpose of God's, of what He wants to be of our lives. May God bless you all. Thank you very much.